You can learn about the legacy of Indiana Avenue and its many great jazz venues during a program at the Eagle Branch on Tuesday, September 2nd at 6 p.m. The presenter will be David Leander Williams, who's the author of the book Indianapolis Jazz: The Masters, Legends, and Legacy of Indiana Avenue. David, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you
for those who aren't familiar with this part of Indianapolis history, give us an idea of the time period that really comprised the heyday of Indiana Avenue.
I would consider the 1940s, 50s, and 60s as the heydays of Indiana Avenue. In the 70s, we run into a period where there's integration, the expansion of IUPUI, and the federal highway system that came through that really kind of interrupted the whole jazz scenes on Indiana Avenue. So the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and 60s were the heyday.
But up until then, kind of the stretch of Indiana Avenue that encompassed all of the jazz clubs was quite long, right?
It was very long. It would extend from 10th Street. We had a club there from 10th Street on the downbeat all the way down to Capitol. So that was a long stretch. I mean, many blocks of jazz clubs on, not only jazz, but jazz, blues, R&B on both sides of the street. So one could conceivably start at the downbeat at 10th and Indiana Avenue, and before reaching Capitol, you may run maybe in the 50s and 60s, run past about 50 venues.
Wow, that's incredible.
Various types of music.
Do you have any personal recollections of Indiana Avenue, or are you
beyond
that?
Yes. No, I was born right in the Lockfield Gardens, and so Indiana Avenue was really my home.
Wow.
I was only about a block from the Avenue, and a lot of the neighborhood institutions were up and down near the Avenue. One was the Senate Avenue YMCA, which was located further down the Avenue, near Senate and Michigan Street. And then there was the supermarkets, the funeral homes, barbershops, that whole area. It was like a world within a world that one could conceivably be born in the Lockfield Gardens area and live there for their entire lives and not leave maybe a mile radius, because we had everything right there.
Wow, that's fascinating. Again, we're speaking with David Leander Williams, who's the author of the book Indianapolis Jazz: The Legacy of Indiana Avenue, presenter of the free program at the Eagle Branch on Tuesday, September 2nd at 6 p.m. Free program. David, let's get into the actual personalities of Indiana Avenue and some of the jazz greats that called it their home. Wes Montgomery would come to mind. What about him and some of the other great jazz artists?
Well, I was fortunate in that I have a history with Wes Montgomery. Wes Montgomery was my father's, one of my father's best friends, and he would come to our house in the early 1960s, and he actually played his guitar on our front porch at 515 West 24th Street. And my father was into electronics. He would fix Wes's amplifiers, and I remember we had Wes's amplifier and guitar in our basement for an entire year. So I met him as a kid, maybe 10 or 11 years old, but a very, very nice person, always had a smile. And I had no idea that he would one day become the world's greatest jazz guitarist.
What about how musicians viewed Indiana Avenue? Was it a primary destination to play jazz, or was it just kind of their local hangout? Or how was Indiana Avenue viewed by musicians?
Well, during this time period, that was the place because of segregation, many of the African-American jazz greats could not perform on Michigan or downtown in the hotel, so this was our only alternative would be to perform on Indiana Avenue. And they loved the Avenue because there was a brotherhood and a sisterhood that was there, in that young jazz performers could come there and be taken under the wing by an older, more seasoned jazz person, and tutored and mentored to the point where they were outstanding jazz people. And there were a number of people who I could name, not only Wes Montgomery, Freddie Hubbard, J.J. Johnson, Leroy Vinegar, Carl Perkins. Now, mind you, this is not the Carl Perkins who was the rock and roll with Elvis Presley on Sun record, but this Carl Perkins left here in 1948, and he went to Los Angeles and performed with Miles Davis. And at that time, Miles Davis said he was the greatest pianist with whom he had ever performed with. His name was Carl Perkins.
Carl Perkins.
So nobody really, but in the book, I have a great bio sketch on Carl Perkins, and I mean, a fantastic pianist, a self-taught pianist, and also he was trained at Christian Alex High School, which at that time had the greatest the music department in the entire, I would say the entire city, maybe in the entire state.
Wow.
Fantastic music professors.
Well, again, the book is Indianapolis Jazz, The Masters, Legends, and Legacy of Indiana Avenue, available in the library's collection. It's a new book by David Leander Williams, and we have a couple of more minutes to share with David some of your thoughts of Indiana Avenue. And one question I wanted to ask was, who patronized Indiana Avenue? What was the composition of the crowds that went to Indiana Avenue?
That's a very, very interesting, also an interesting question, in that we must understand this is during the time of segregation, the 40s, 50s, and up into the 60s. There were clubs on the Meridian that prohibited African Americans from entering. So there was a jazz, I guess you would call it a jazz community outside the avenue. And I remember many a times walking down the avenue and you'd see whites coming into the avenue. And they were treated very, very warmly because we knew that they were coming in to enjoy jazz.
Yes.
And there was this myth that whites couldn't come on the avenue. They would come and they would be treated very, very well. And also there were white jazz people who were able to cut their chops on the avenue. You know, there was Benny Barth, a great drummer. Then you have Dick Dickinson. Then Wes Montgomery had his two brothers formed a quartet, and they were called the Master Sounds. And there were two people who were whites. That was Benny Barth and Richie Crabtree. And so this whole idea that it was always all black, that's not true. That whites would come on the avenue, they would be treated warmly. And we appreciated them coming there because I mean we were able to extend our hospitality.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Oh, how I wish I could snap my finger and go back and
right,
and
doing this time
just one time. Mm-hmm. David, thanks for joining us, and best of luck with your program. David Leander Williams, the author of Indianapolis Jazz, The Masters, Legends, and Legacy of Indiana Avenue. David will be presenting free his program on Tuesday, September 2nd at 6 p.m. at the Eagle Branch. And of course, to learn more, visit our website at ndpl.org. Thanks again, David.
Thank you.